Olá, bem-vindos a mais um episódio do podcast Bagagem de Mão. Eu sou a Sónia Justo e hoje vamos ter um episódio um bocadinho diferente. O episódio vai ser em inglês, eu vou fazendo a tradução e vamos falar com alguém que já visitou todos os países do mundo, a Gina. Então vamos chamá-la Podcast Bagagem de Mão, um podcast semanal de Sónia Justo com o patrocínio de Heymondo Seguros e Fotoadrenalina. Hi, Gina.
Olá, bom dia.
How are you?
Good, thank you. How are you? Thank you for having me
Great.
on.
Thank you for accepting my invite. So, Gina, for those, I'm pronouncing well. It's okay. It's your name, Gina.
Yes, it's good.
Yes. Okay. So, for those who don't know you, could you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your journey to visiting all country in the world?
Absolutely. So, my name's Gina Morello. I'm originally from the USA. I lived mostly in the South my whole life, but most recently I was in Dallas, Texas for many years
Okay.
before moving to Portugal a little over 2 years ago.
Okay.
And so I worked in the airline industry. First, I worked for American Airlines at the headquarters. And so I was able to travel on the flight benefits.
Oh, great, great.
Yeah, yes.
That was my dream job when I was little.
Oh, yeah, yeah. It really helps. But I didn't have the intention of traveling to every country in the world. Initially, I just was enjoying myself traveling to new places and doing interesting things. And then the second half of my career, I worked for a technology company called Sabre. And if you know the company Amadeus here in Europe, it's the North American competitor to that, and they have operations and ticketing as well as provide software to clients. So I worked as a consultant with airline clients, either just business consulting or work with the technology that my company provide. So I did a lot of travel to far-flung places with my
Okay.
company, so like Ethiopia, Papua New Guinea, things like that. And then finally, I didn't have any work in the pandemic, and
Mhm.
um, yeah, so I moved abroad and ended up in Lisbon.
In Lisbon. So, and what initially inspired you to set this goal? Was there a specific moment when you decided, okay, I'm going to visit every country in the world, or how it happened?
Yeah, so I had a colleague at Sabre, the technology company, and we were just kind of comparing the different countries that we've been to,
Okay.
and and then as a joke, my colleague said, "Oh, we should count and see who's been to more countries." And so we did this exercise of counting, and then we thought about, well, what exactly is a country, right? Um, and then came upon the United Nations list of 193 members, or 195 if you count the two observers. And so at the time we were both around 80 or so countries and decided, well, let's try to get to 100. So then once I reached 100, maybe like, I don't know, a year and a half or 2 years later, then that was about 2013 or 2012, actually, maybe that we were counting. So around 2014, I decided to visit all the countries in the world. I thought, 100 is more than half
Yeah,
of the
yeah.
countries. So I will try, to visit all the countries. I didn't really have a timeline or anything.
Okay,
And
okay.
also,
So,
I didn't realize that the ones I had visited were kind of the easier ones at the time, and it would get more difficult.
okay. And how long did it take you to complete this journey?
I would say like start to finish, maybe 20 years. If
Okay,
yeah,
okay,
yeah. So I mean, I traveled only to a few countries before I started working for the airline. I don't know, maybe six or seven or something like this.
okay,
So if you include all that, more than 20 years, a little
okay.
years.
And were there any countries that were particularly difficult to enter, either due to visa, logistics, or safety concerns?
So yeah, all of the above. Like
Okay.
at the time, so the world was more closed. Um,
It
I'd say
it was nothing like nowadays, because nowadays it's very easy to travel, but you started 20 years ago, so I guess it was really, well, it was different, for
yes.
sure.
So I mean, one thing that's made it easier is globalization. And the world is more open in general. Places that were traditionally closed to tourists, like Saudi Arabia and Equatorial Guinea, they now want tourists to come and they make it easier with e-visas and less restrictive policies. So at the time, Saudi Arabia wasn't open for tourists, and and for women, it was very rare that they could even go. So actually, the first time I went there it was on a a business visa because that was the only way you could
To enter,
travel.
yeah.
And I did that in a few countries, like Libya, for example. Trying to think.
Okay.
Yeah, Libya and Saudi Arabia come to mind. And also, there was some danger involved depending on the country's
The country,
situation.
yes.
So Syria and Yemen, Afghanistan have all had recent either war or
War,
civil war.
yeah.
And at the time, those were difficult countries, but I was able to go sort of in a calm period. If you wait long enough, the country will either stabilize or it could be that it destabilizes. So Sudan is a good example of that, where it was fairly calm for many, many years until the past 2 years, there's been a
Okay.
civil war.
Yeah. So, and you mostly travel solo, or
So a mix of travel in the early days, well, and especially for easy countries to travel, like I would say anywhere in Europe, I just go by myself and either take a bus or rent a car or something like this. And the reason for that is just uh, sometimes it's hard to find people to travel with and that have the same schedule and also the same
yes,
interests and
yeah,
the same travel style, right? Like some friends I have from the US like only luxury or comfortable trips. And then I have some friends that are like backpacking and hitchhiking. So you have to find the right people.
and which is your traveling style? Do you backpack? How do you travel?
Um, I would
Or it's a mix?
It's a mix.
Yeah.
Yeah, some places you cannot, travel in luxury. Like if you want to go to a remote place, for example, in Russia, I went a couple of years back and it was staying in local, they call them chums.
Okay.
But yeah, it's just like a tent basically.
Yeah.
So you'll find that like in Russia.
Yeah, you have to adapt. It depends on the country, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I feel the same. Yeah, when I
Yeah.
travel. Yeah. So, and what was the biggest challenge you faced while visiting every country? Like,
Um, I think that honestly, besides the visas and the war, torn countries, um, is the difficulty being away from home so much. It's difficult on relationships.
yes,
Oh,
yeah, because as you visit every country in the world, you are, uh, well, in a year, you are a long time abroad, away from home, right?
Yes, so not just with I was married at the time. Now he's my ex-husband. So that's just one example of
Okay.
difficulty, but also with friends, right? When you're gone for so long, they just stop inviting you
Yeah.
to things. And you miss family events, birthdays or my nephew's birthday party or something like this. It's just it's difficult. And
Yeah.
then there's also a toll on your health. It's always traveling. Like it's hard to keep a good fitness routine unless you're very
Yes, yeah,
disciplined.
it's true. I feel that, yes. And it's difficult to eat healthy because there are places where you can't do that. Even if you, okay, I'm going to eat fruit, but there are some countries where the fruit has a lot of sugar, the fruit from that country. And this is an example. And it's impossible to work out every day and have a routine. That's what I feel.
Yes, yeah. And some places, like you said, they might not have fruit or they might not have vegetables. So for example, in the South Pacific islands like Nauru and Tuvalu and Kiribati, everything is imported besides maybe fish. And so all you'll get is frozen food, frozen vegetables, and like I said, maybe fish as well. So it's very difficult to eat.
Yeah, because one thing it's when you go on vacation and you stay in a resort where you have everything and you can choose. Other thing it's when you go to remote places or places that you have no choice. You have to eat what they have there. And most of people don't understand that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really difficult if you have food restrictions to find food. I've done a few group trips. I forgot to mention that
Okay.
I've done group trips, especially when I didn't hadn't met a lot of other travelers yet. So I would join a group trip, and I met some vegans traveling, vegan and vegetarian.
Okay.
And yeah, vegan is really difficult. I was traveling in the stands like Uzbekistan and Kyrgyzstan, and
Yeah.
they're just
Yeah, because
not.
it's all about meat.
Yes,
I've
it's
been in
really difficult.
Uzbekistan and it's all about meat.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And were there any moments when you felt unsafe or had to make like quick decisions for your safety?
Fortunately, I've been pretty lucky. I haven't had any big problems like robbery or um something like that. I have had a couple of problems like with men being too aggressive.
Okay. Harassment or
Yes, yeah, or even like touching my,
okay. Yeah.
yeah, inappropriate touching. So that was bad.
Yeah.
I was actually even with a guide or friends and had to,
Yeah.
make sure we exited or excused myself from the situation. So that was one thing. And then there were a couple of times where I was a little bit more scared. So in Pakistan, I was actually there for work when I was working for the technology company, and there were riots because they wanted to privatize the airline. And so people were rioting and burning things in the streets, and they told us not to come into the office for a couple of days. And then finally they said just to leave. But we were having difficulty getting to the airport because there were like all these protesters in the streets, burning trash and tires and like knocking on the van as
Oh
we
my
were going
God.
to the airport, but we managed to make
That's
it.
really, really scary.
Yeah, and actually, in the what year was this? It had to be late 2019 when I went to Syria. You enter via Lebanon, and Lebanon had just started having, it was like the first day of their protest, the night I arrived, and so there were people in the streets and they were burning things.
Mm.
And since it was the first night of it, I was like, what's going on? But it turned out, I mean, they were blocking the roads for like weeks, but they would let you go. They weren't, it seemed scary, but they let us pass and it was okay. It was
Okay.
as scary as I thought initially. And we were able to drive to the Syrian border with a few detours. So
Okay. Okay. So on the flip side, what was one of the most rewarding or unexpected experiences you had?
oh, 'cause there's so many. Well, one of the most, I would say, memorable or beautiful things for me was my ex-husband and we hiked the Everest Base Camp Trail.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was so beautiful. I love mountains. So it was a beautiful experience. And at the end, we took a helicopter flight seeing tour. So we could view all the beautiful parts of the Everest mountains, like
Like we see in
beyond,
the movies.
yeah, like beyond the base camp. So we got to see like the Kumbu ice falls, and we were able to see North Col and advanced base camp, and of course the peak from still a distance, but it was so beautiful. It brought tears to my eyes because it was just spectacular. And it's something I wouldn't have seen otherwise. I don't have any plans to, climb Everest.
Yeah.
I know people that have done it, and but I can totally see why people would do it. I mean, the nature is just so spectacular. And it makes you feel
Little.
really
Yeah.
small. Yeah, yeah, that you're just here for a short time and these beautiful mountains formed over so many years, and they'll be here for so many more.
Yeah.
Uh,
So, and did you ever experience culture shock in any country?
oh, yes, yes. And actually I like that. Because
Yeah.
to me it takes me away from or it gets me out of my comfort zone and makes me have a different appreciation or in some ways maybe not appreciation
Yeah.
for my own culture, how I was brought up. So I think the first time I felt culture shock is when I went to Vietnam. And
Oh, I didn't expect that you were
yeah,
going to
well,
say Vietnam. Okay, okay.
yeah. So for me, it was like I got off the plane and exited, and there were just so many motorbikes like
Okay.
buzzing around like crazy. I mean, this was 25 years ago. So, and for me, I was like, wow, look at, um, everybody goes by bikes and they have like five people on the motorcycle. And I saw people carrying like glass panes on
Yeah.
motorbikes. And, it was just a different lifestyle. And the food was amazing. And so I just felt that it was just very different from anything I'd seen before. And then the next sort of culture shock I had was going to India
Oh,
with
yeah. Yeah.
some friends. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
yes, in India, it's a place that everyone says that it's. I have never been to India, and I'm a little bit scared of going because of that, because of the cultural shock. Yeah, I want to go, but I think I'm going to. I don't want to go just for now. I have a lot of countries to visit yet, so not for now.
yeah, I mean for me, I enjoyed it, but the first time I went, um, yeah, I never have allergies, but driving from Delhi to Taj Mahal, like my face kind of swelled and my eyes started burning and watering from the pollution. So that was difficult for me. And then, yeah, seeing the extreme poverty is also shocking.
Yeah, yeah.
But the smells, the sights, the sounds, they're all different. I feel like it's like a sensory overload because it's very colorful and chaotic, lots of energy.
And it's
I
a
don't
lot
know.
of things to going on at the same time.
Yes, yeah. And it's a big country with a lot to offer. So you could spend months there and not even see it all. I feel like I haven't scratched the surface yet. I recently went to Northeast India in December with a couple of friends for to photograph some tribes there in Northeast India, and it's different from the rest of India. It has more of a uh, feel like Asia because it's on the border with Bangladesh and Myanmar and Bhutan.
Okay.
So it's pretty isolated, and that's why there's still, indigenous people with their local dress, and they still have tattoos and scarifications and things.
Okay. And were there any places that completely surprised you, either in a good or a bad way?
Oh, that's a good question. I would say actually in a good way, maybe Nigeria.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, this is everyone, everyone complains when they either have to or need to travel to Central Africa. So that like Nigeria and Central African Republic, places like this, that it's difficult travel, which it is, and it's very corrupt and dangerous. I mean, it's relatively dangerous, but so I was, kind of bracing myself for the worst experience in Nigeria, like being asked for bribes and things like that. And this the one of the tour guides I had or local fixers, a woman, she told me, just play like it's a game. Like if someone says, "Oh, do you have a little gift for me?" or something like this, you can say, "Oh, not this time, but I'll get you next time," or something like this. And
Okay.
so I treated it like that. And so yeah, they were polite and tried to push me in some way, in some cases for the bribe, but I just joked and said, "Oh, I don't have any. I'm sorry. I'll get you next time or when I'm leaving or something like this." And so I was able to avoid paying paying any bribes. And the people in general were super friendly.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I didn't have any problems.
Oh, great. And there was one that you had like that surprised you in a bad way?
Yes, I'm laughing as I say this. I've been to Gabon twice the reason I went a second time is to give it
Second chance.
yeah, and also to see some of the national parks that I had missed before. And both times the trip was very difficult and I didn't get to see what I want. Um, it's very overpriced for what you get, so they really charge crazy prices for tourists. I don't know if there's a local price and a tourist price, but I think
Probably, yeah.
it's that way in many countries. Um, and we didn't get to see what we wanted to see on the second trip with to Gabon. I was on a group trip. And we didn't get to see the tour operator didn't fulfill their obligations. Like they
Okay.
didn't pay the drivers, and it took, if they said it was going to take 2 hours to get somewhere, it either took 10 hours or we didn't make it. And so
So, okay.
yeah,
And are you planning to go on a third time or?
I don't think so. I think it's a sign
Yeah.
that I won't try a third time, or I would have to, maybe when I'm retired and have lots of free time, I'll try again. Because there are some interesting wildlife parks there, um, where you can see, like in rare cases, like a hippo on the beach or an elephant on the beach. And then there's mandrills there, a species of primate that only live there that I would like to see. So maybe
Maybe.
I won't say never, but
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
not a priority.
Okay. And if you had to pick one country that felt like home, which one would it be and why?
Well, Portugal, of course.
Yes, good answer.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I definitely Portugal because yeah, I'd been here a few times before I moved here. Um, and I loved it. Yeah, it's got good weather, obviously, and the people are very welcoming and warm and
I think we
friendly.
are, but well, I'm biased, so
And um, I like that. Well, the historical architecture, well, in Lisbon, and like the history in general, Portugal is very interesting. And there's a lot to see in such a small country.
yeah, yeah. You have even in Lisbon, you have a lot of things to see, a lot. Just
Yeah,
in Lisbon, you have more than 100 churches. So,
yes, that's definitely a lot.
yeah. And how did traveling to every country change your perspective on the world?
Um, well, it definitely made me more open um, to different cultures and lifestyles and religions. And I learned so many things that I wouldn't have learned otherwise. Uh,
And
just
and
about the
and I
world.
think and the idea that we have of some countries, it's very different than when you go there and you see that that's nothing like the media tells you, isn't it?
True. Yeah, absolutely. That's a very good point. So a good example of that is like Iran, is a good example of that. The people are so friendly and warm and welcoming, and at least the media in the US makes Iran out to seem like, they're the enemy. But in reality, the people are not the government, right? In any
Exactly. That's
country.
where I always say that, well, people, it's not the person that are ruling the country. So we had a dictatorship in Portugal. So, and if you are going to judge people by their government, well, it's it's not right. Yeah, but
Yeah,
I
it's
think
not
we
fair.
all do that. I think we have to be aware of that. And when we travel, I think it reminds me and remind us about that. That okay, the politics are one thing and people are another thing.
Absolutely. That's a very good point. And I think that, the other thing I learned was that people are the same everywhere at the core, right? We
Yeah,
just want to be happy and have a family and be safe and
and be loved.
yes, and to be loved. And at the core, everyone is the same. The rest of
Yes,
the stuff is
yeah,
not so important.
yeah.
So,
We all want the same things all around the world. Yeah, I feel the same. Yeah. Was there a particular act of kindness from a stranger that stayed with you?
oh, yeah, I mean, like I would say too many to even name. Like people are very kind if
And,
if you
and
meet.
normally the world is it's a safe place when you travel. I have that experience because people are really scared. There are people that are really scared, but I think it's the ones that don't go that are mostly scared, isn't it?
Yeah, so like I rented a car and I was driving around the Balkan region and I got a flat tire and not just a little hole, like it was the tire blew up and there was no spare in the trunk. Ah,
Oh,
so that was a lesson to learn. Always check to
yeah.
see if there's a spare. But then many people stopped to help me. And right, like I feel like in the US, people would just drive by, but
Yes.
people stopped to help me. Try to, they would look at the tire and be like, try to fix it or realize it's not fixable. So that one comes to mind. Or I've been walking around places looking lost, which sometimes I'm not that good with directions. I mean, obviously I have
Me
Google
neither.
Maps.
I'm a tour guide and I'm not good with directions. Yeah.
Yeah, back in the day when there was paper maps, it was so much more difficult. It was difficult.
Yeah.
I mean, I can read a map, but then actually finding my way is difficult. But I had people stop. I can't remember even which country it was, but and ask if I needed directions because I looked lost, or if I was trying to I was having trouble at a machine. People come up to you and help you. Or like traveling in places like Iran or Afghanistan, people will often invite you in for tea.
Yeah.
Um, Uzbekistan also, this happens. So, yeah, there's a lot of opportunity to meet people.
Mhm. You just have to be open to that.
Yes, yes, exactly.
Mhm. A-
Um, yeah.
And what advice would you give to someone who dreams of visiting every country but thinks it's impossible?
Oh, nothing is impossible.
Yeah.
So,
Uh,
you can make it happen. I would say a lot of people are doing it now, not a lot, but relative to before, when it was a little bit more difficult and also more expensive. So now you can, either get a job related to travel, either something like I had in the airline industry, or the to be tour leader, tour guide,
yeah.
or something like this, or or you can have a job that just you can work anywhere. So this digital nomad type lifestyle is quite popular now, where you might work in tech or something, but you can work from anywhere. So that enables you to travel.
Mhm.
And there's cheaper ways you can travel if finances are your concern. You can do longer trips where you don't have the expense of airfare as much, and reduce costs by things like couch surfing. People still couch surf. It kind of died in popularity during the pandemic, and then I think it's come back a little bit. But so couch surfing and um, uh, take local transport. Or I have friends that hitchhike. I don't really hitchhike myself, but it can be done. And then there's a lot of resources now that there used to not be. So online travel clubs are are a good resource. Like most traveled people, there is a good travel club that's online. And there's also a couple of other ones.
Yeah.
And so you can get information about how to travel to places and
Yeah.
who,
And to make a plan.
yes, yes, make a plan. Yes.
And
Because you can do it efficiently. Like I did not plan it that way. So at the end of the journey, I had a few in the Caribbean and a few in Africa and Asia. So
yeah.
if you plan them and group them together, it's much more efficient.
Mm. And now that you have accomplished this massive goal, what's next? Do you still feel the same excitement about travel?
I do. I do. So as far as goals, I'm just trying to visit things, interesting things for me. So I like to photograph local people and nature. So, like I mentioned recently, I was in India, Northeast India, to photograph some tribes there. And before that, I was in Finland and Norway and Sweden for the Northern Lights. So those are my two recent big trips. I still do work travel, so I was just in Doha for work,
Okay.
which
And there's always something to see and to do around the world. isn't it?
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. It's just, I'm trying to have more balance now. So I'm trying to make a life in Portugal and study Portuguese and,
Yes.
uh,
Next episode we are going to record in Portuguese, okay?
oh, okay. Okay. It can be. Yes.
Maybe next year or something. Okay, I'm going to give you time to practice.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. And what's the best meal you ever had while traveling? Do you remember?
Oh, the best meal. It's difficult. Because I like food in general. I eat
Yeah,
everything
me too. Yeah.
and I enjoy trying food from all over the world. And so, I mean, it's hard to say. Like I like Ethiopian food.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just different. You have the bread. It's kind of like spongy. It's called injera.
Okay.
And then you have small little stews on top of
Oh,
it, and you use the bread to eat the
oh,
stew. with your hand.
yes.
It's
A
very
very
good.
Portuguese thing.
Yeah. Yes. And a lot of people don't like it for whatever reason, but so that's good. And of course, Italian food is very good.
Yeah, yeah. Uh,
Vietnamese food is very good. So Japanese, yeah, it's hard to pick just
yeah,
one.
just one. Yeah, if you like food, it's yeah, I can understand that. And if you could only visit three countries again for the rest of your life, which ones would they be?
Oh, well, I live in Portugal, so yeah, I don't have to pick that one, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I live in Portugal, so I would say Norway. It has a lot of beautiful places, so a lot to offer from nature perspective. Um, I would say maybe I really like Ethiopia.
Okay.
It just has interesting culture, and history and nature also. Um, and it's hard to pick just three. Maybe um, I would pick maybe India, I guess. I know,
Okay.
again, it's not the easiest travel, but there are just so many interesting things to visit. You could spend a long time in many different places with different culture and history and food.
Okay,
So,
great. So this is the end. Thank you so much for your time. It was a lovely talk. Thank
oh,
you.
thank you so much. It was very nice talking to you.
It was really, really nice. Thank you. You are going to travel again. Do you know where are you going next? Do you have a trip?
So I have a short trip actually to Oslo for my friend's book launch, and
Okay.
the it's a couple, and he's visited the every country twice now.
Okay.
Yeah, and then
It's another goal.
yes. And then after that, I have a trip to South Africa, to visit a game reserve where for photography. So they allow droning there, in the private game reserve. So I'm gonna take my drone to get some aerial shots
Okay.
of wildlife, well, and with my normal camera as well.
Okay.
So those are my next two trips.
Okay. Great. So
Great.
thank you very much, Gina. Nós voltamos na próxima semana com mais um episódio e mais um convidado. Até lá, fiquem bem e boas viagens. Thank you, Gina. And I was forgetting your Instagram account for people to follow you.
Oh yes, it's Adventurous Gina.
Okay, but I will leave the link down in
Okay,
the
okay, great.
description box. Okay,
Thank you
thank you
so
so
much.
much. Bye.
Até a
Bye.
próxima. Obrigada.
Yeah.
Tchau, tchau.